Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So welcome to everybody who's gathered together this afternoon. Today is the full moon of July, and according to our Buddhist tradition, customs, this is referred to as Āsālhā Pūjā, the full moon day, which is the day when the Buddha gave the first teaching on the middle way and the Four Noble Truths to his 5 companions in the deer park, Disipatana, outside of Varanasi, about 2,600 some odd years ago. So we take this as a celebration day. It's also the time when we begin the rains retreat in Asia. This is the beginning of the monsoon season, so this is the time for the rainy season retreat to begin. So tomorrow evening we start that formal retreat period, although our winter retreat has carried on through the spring on account of the coronavirus lockdown retreat. So it's ongoing forms of retreating that we have been participating in. But today I feel is a very good opportunity to consider this is the day, at least according to our traditions, our customs, our understanding, when the Buddha laid out the teaching on the Four Noble Truths. And as it said, he set the wheel of Dhamma rolling. The Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta is the discourse on setting in motion the wheel of the Dhamma. And the Buddha Rupa behind me here in the temple at Amaravati is called Pra-Buddha Dhammacakramravadi, which is a sort of Thai rendering of the Pali, meaning the venerable Buddha who sets in motion the wheel of Dhamma in the deathless realm. That was given, the name of this Buddha image was given by the late Sangaraja of Thailand, Somdet Nyana. And he sort of derived the name from his own sort of inner, searching, when Lumpur Sumedho requested him to give a name when the Buddha Rupa was being made in Thailand. And part of this was because the teaching of the Four Noble Truths was very much at the center of Lumpur Sumedho's practice, also for Lumpur Cha and the Thai forest tradition in particular, and the depth of wisdom and the qualities of liberation that can be seen coming forth from the investigation of the Four Noble Truths was something that had been, inspiring, informing Lumpur Sumedho's life throughout his time as a monk. And so when Amaravati opened, he wanted some particular way of keeping the focus on the Dhammacakka Sutta, on the Four Noble Truths, and that setting in motion of the wheel of Dhamma. So today, Dhammacakka Day, the Āsālhā Pūjā Day, is a good day to bring attention to those Four Noble Truths. And even though we might know the text of them, suffering, origin, cessation, path, it's not too difficult to learn the words or to understand the basic concepts. But as I was saying to some others this morning, there's this particularly poignant and direct teaching that the Buddha gives, where he says it's because of not understanding 4 things that you and I and all living beings have continued to travel and trudge through this long round of births and deaths, rebirths and redeaths. And these are the not understanding dukkha, the experience of dissatisfaction, discontent, not knowing its origin, not knowing the way that it ceases, or the possibility of it ceasing, and also then not knowing the way that leads to the cessation, the ending of that dukkha. So that this is a simple teaching, but it cuts right to the very core of our lives. And in this world, today there are so many difficulties, not just the coronavirus that's impacting so many countries around the planet and causing so many changes, and the pain and death of the illness impacting so many people's lives. But there's all kinds of social inequities, difficulties. The whole Black Lives Matter movement that has been extremely active and say vigorously engaged with trying to help change people's perceptions in a skillful manner in the last few weeks. But also all around the world, and there's in every human society there's the oppression of the weak by the strong, and the social inequalities, everywhere, in every place you look around the world, there is this kind of social suffering. Also, just within families, the way that we find it so difficult to get along with each other, parents with children, sisters with brothers, sisters with sisters, brothers with brothers. The Buddha was a very wise and very intelligent, well-informed person, it seems, and he considered carefully. He had the opportunity to engage in political power. He was a crown prince. He could have taken over the kingdom of the Sakyans in the Himalayan foothills. He was extremely knowledgeable. He could have been a brilliant doctor. His knowledge of the way that nature works was extremely profound. And many, many different things he could have done with his life, but I feel that we are the very blessed beneficiaries of the fact that he chose to not put his attention on the 10,000, the 10 millions of tens of millions of different social issues or biological issues or familial issues that say. What he could put his attention into, but he realized what was most important was to get right to the very core, to the very heart of what is the malaise, the illness that besets us all, the difficulties and the inequities, the disease that affects us all. And so this formulation of the Four Noble Truths, it's said that it's put into the structure that it is because it's a kind of medical diagnosis. That dukkha is the symptom of this spiritual disease, and craving, tanha, the various kinds of craving, the craving for sense pleasure, craving to be something, to become, craving to not be, to not exist, to not feel. Vibhava tanha, these are the different kinds of craving. That's the cause of this illness, this ailment. The prognosis, the possibility is well-being can be realized, dukkha nirodha, that dukkha can end. There can be a quality of perfect balance. It can be a life lived free of that sense of wrongness, even if the body is ill, or even if you're still poor, or you still have hunger or difficulty, that the mind can be with that and not create suffering around it. That is possible. That's a potential for us. And then the Buddha laid out the fourth truth as the way, the path, the medicine that leads to that quality of well-being. So these kind of words are very frequently repeated. And so we've probably all of those who are gathered here today or listening in, watching this from around the world have heard these words over and over. But the thing that makes a difference is applying that. So whatever the area of concern or interest is within our life, whether it's a family argument, whether it's an illness in our body, whether it's the laws that govern our behavior in society, or how wealth and power are distributed, about who makes decisions, who gets the good stuff and who gets the leftovers, or who gets nothing at all. These different areas of interest and concern that we have, the different areas of work that we have. In each of these different areas, whether it's in the family, in the workplace, in society, whatever field it might be, the Four Noble Truths that principle, it pertains, it operates in every single domain, so that whether we're acting in the social sphere, we're a politician, or we're a social reformer, whether we're a therapist, whether we're a parent, we're a mother or a father, whether we're a school kid, whether we're a Buddhist nun or a monk, whatever nationality we might be, these four truths, these four principles operate. And so the encouragement that we have with the teaching and the possibility that we've inherited from the Buddha is to see, are we suffering? Is there suffering? Is there dukkha? Is there that feeling of wrongness, or it shouldn't be this way? Where is it coming from? Where is this feeling of wrongness rooted? Where is its ground? And then looking at the source of that, then there is the recognition, it's coming from, I don't want things to be this way, I want them to be that way. If only I wasn't here, if only I was over there, then everything would be great. If only I wasn't me, if I was just somebody else, that would be so wonderful, life would be so much better. Whether it's, as I said, whether it's in terms of education, or physical health, or the family, society, but whatever it might be, we can bring attention to that area of friction, that feeling of abrasion, that feeling of wrongness. Bring attention to that, seeing where it's coming from, recognizing that cause, and then the encouragement is to let go. With each of the truths, there's a task involved with it. Dukkha needs to be apprehended, to be realized. The cause of it, the grasping or clinging, tanha, that craving, needs to be let go of, to be relaxed. And then when that is, say, actualized, when that letting go happens, then there is dukkha nirodha. That maybe, as I was saying, of course, if we're attached to a feeling of hunger and we relax the attitude towards the hunger, we don't take it so personally or don't get so worried about it, but we're still hungry. But the mind doesn't make it into a problem or a thing that shouldn't be. It doesn't mean that we're passive or don't do anything about it. If we're feeling hungry and then some food appears in front of us, it doesn't mean that we don't eat, but what it means is that the mind is not creating that tension around it. It's not creating that quality of agitation around it. And the way that is brought into the different dimensions of our life is the Eightfold Path in our views, in our intentions, in our speech, our actions, our livelihood, in the way we train our minds, in the effort that we make to do things, the capacity that we have to be mindful and to concentrate the mind in all the different areas of our life, in the areas of behavior, virtue, sila, in the areas of concentration, mind training, and then in the area of wisdom, seeing things according to their true nature. So that even though we've heard these teachings over and over again, why are we still suffering? Why are we spending a Sunday afternoon sitting down to listen to these teachings? It's because, like the Buddha said, because of not fully understanding four things. You and I have had to travel and trudge through this long round. So it's because those principles haven't really entered the heart. They're not informing every single moment of our experience. So I feel that this day, this auspicious day of the full moon, when the Buddha set in motion the wheel of Dhamma, he put this understanding that had arisen within the heart into words and then conveyed it through the miracle of instruction to his friends, the 5 companions in the deer park. And one of them, it was only one of the 5, Kandanya, that understood what the Buddha was saying. And as he was speaking, then Kandanya lit up, and the Buddha said, Anyasi watabo Kandanyo, Anyasi watabo Kandanyoti. Kandanya understands, he's got it. And in the sutta, as we recite it, you still have that same expression of the Buddha saying, yes, Kandanya's got it, okay, he understands. He could see Kandanya lighting up. So from that time forward, he was called Anya Kandanya, Kandanya who understands. So So that miracle of instruction is also something I think it's good to, on this day, to reflect upon how amazing that the Buddha was able to put his understanding into words, and for those still to pertain 2,600 years later. And that right now, today, that this can make a difference in how we handle this feeling, this body, this mind, this life with these particular conditions. It's amazing. I feel gratitude for the Buddha's teaching, and then all of those who've helped to carry that on, to embody that over the centuries, is very, very appropriate. And the more that these four principles can fully be embodied in our hearts, in these lives, these hearts and minds, moment by moment, then the more that our work in the areas of the family and in the workplace, in the monastery, in society, around the world, then it can inform what we do, what we say, the attitudes that we have, how we relate with each other, and then the 10,000, the tens of millions of different difficulties that that brew up around the world, all the different societies where there's so much inequality and oppression and difficulty. These principles can inform all of those areas of activity where whoever's interested, whoever wants to listen and apply these principles, these teachings, they can inform the work, the activity, and the possibility to bring things to a quality of well-being in all those different areas, whether it's in India or China, Hong Kong, Palestine, in the Amazon jungle, whether it's in Britain, in Germany, and in Scandinavia, Canada, all over Africa, Australia, New Zealand, all around the planet. That every single area where people are living and working and breathing and interacting, the more that these principles can be fully embodied and understood, really received and actualized, then that can inform all of the interactions that are taking place in those different domains and help to bring about that ending of dukkha. So maybe the last thing I'll say by way of this sort of introductory piece today on this Āsālhā Pūjā is that one of the key teachings that I like to share, and do so over and over again, knowing these words have been heard over and over and over, but it does bear saying again, is the Buddha's teaching called the arrow. And in this he's describing the two different kinds of suffering, of dukkha. So there's the dukkha, there's the pain that arises from having a body and a mind. If you're alive, if you have and presumably if you're watching this webcast or sitting here in the temple, then there is life by implication. So you have a body, you have a mind. If that's the case, then there are feelings that you can feel: pleasure, pain, neutral feeling. So that the very fact of being alive in a body means that there's going to be pain. And that kind of dukkha is inescapable. There's always going to be discomfort at some point. That is non-negotiable. So that in the teaching of the arrow, the Buddha said it's like a soldier on a battlefield. And the Buddha, having been a soldier himself, he uses a lot of military analogies, similes. So if you're a soldier on a battlefield is shot by an arrow. So that first arrow is the experience of physical pain. That is inescapable. Nobody escapes, nobody evades that first arrow. If you've got a body and a mind, there will be pain. So the dukkha that is talked about in the Four Noble Truths is not that first arrow. That's non-negotiable. That can't be escaped. And even the Buddha himself had chronic pain. When he was in his 80s, when he reached the age of 80, he had chronic back pain, and speaks about it quite openly in a number of teachings. And so even a fully enlightened being like the Buddha could not avoid physical pain. But what he said was, with this teaching on the arrow, he said the second arrow is the fretting, the resenting, the negativity, the fear, stressing that is created around that physical pain. Everything the mind adds to it. It shouldn't be there. When's it going to be over? Why me? This isn't fair. All of that second arrow, that can be avoided. And so I feel, when talking about the Four Noble Truths, it's really important to get your head around. The ending of suffering doesn't mean the ending of pain. It means the ending of that proliferation, the elaboration around dukkha, around what we don't like. But also, it's the second arrow can be stressing about what we like, having got what we wanted, trying to hang on to it, trying to keep other people away from it, hoping that it's going to be around next year, so you can have it then as well. So that second arrow, that is the dukkha that the Four Noble Truths refers to. And so that when we talk about the ending of dukkha, it doesn't mean everybody liking you, or always having neighbors who are quiet and respectful. It doesn't mean never having any illness. Yeah, we'll have noisy neighbors. We'll have a painful body. We'll get sicknesses. There'll still be difficulties and pain and discomfort for us and others coming from the natural order of things. But the mind will know how not to make a problem out of it. Which again doesn't mean being passive or just sort of being numb and not taking action or doing things to help reduce difficulty for yourself and others. As I said, if you're hungry and someone puts food in front of you, you don't have to refuse the food. No, if the food is there and you're hungry and it's offered to you, then you can eat it for sure, and that hungry feeling will go away. But the centerpiece, the core of the Four Noble Truths, and what the wheel that the Buddha set in motion all those centuries ago, 26 centuries ago, it's all about how to dodge that second arrow. That's what it's all for. So it's arrow avoidance tactics is what the teaching is about. How to live with this body, this mind, this society, to live in the world, and to evade that second arrow. And then the more that we are able to evade that, how that doesn't oppress or pain us, then the more we are able to help others similarly to evade that second arrow, and to do what can be done to help other beings along the way also. So I'll leave my opening reflections to that point and go to this week's questions. Also, because this is Āsālhā Pūjā, and the Rains Retreat begins tomorrow, then we'll change the mode. So next Sunday there won't be this Q&A, but rather there'll be a more sort of regular Sunday afternoon talk, and we'll have a list of titles for the talks on the website, and then once those have been listed, then people can send in their questions according to the title, and it's up to your own guesswork whether your questions will match what the title says or not. But we'll find out whether that works or whether that's a very poor idea on my part. So anyway, first one. Thank you very much for planning to broadcast Dhamma Talks online. So someone's been listening. So important and helpful for practitioners, especially those in more remote parts with no direct access to temples and teachers. I have a question on not self. Haven't we all? Smile, smile. Is it not that somehow on a worldly level, self protects you from injury and death through fear? To survive in this world without the delusion of a self, is this where wise fear, quote unquote, comes in? Is it the knowing of this that takes over from the self? Well, there's a few different dimensions to this, a good question, and an area that is useful to explore, and I've talked about quite a few times recently. So the fear is one of Mother Nature's great devices. I mean, it's also in the animal world. It's there in many beings, many creatures that don't have much thinking faculties. So fear is very much a protective aspect of the living world, and so that the pulling away from things that are painful or threatening, that's the way that most creatures survive. It's only the ones who are the sort of top predators, like sharks and such like, or polar bears that don't seem to have much fear, because they know they're at the top of the chain. They haven't got anything much to be afraid of, usually apart from humans with weapons. But the feeling of fear is a protective device. So that's how it works. It's a painful emotional quality, so that when it arises, you get away from the thing that is causing that, so that it's a very basic and powerful method in the natural world to protect us. And so that it's where the mind attaches to that and spins it out over time, then it really becomes a problem. So that so I would say that it's not so much self as an idea or self-view that protects us, but just the living system and the way the mind works in the natural order. Fear is a very primal and necessary protection. Like pain is similarly, it's what protects us. It works by being painful and uncomfortable, by being unpleasant. That's how it does its job. So I think it's not good to demonize pain or fear. They're there for a very good reason. Our ancestors who didn't have fear or didn't feel much pain didn't survive. So that's why we experience it today. And so that the issue where fear becomes something problematic is where the thinking mind takes hold of memory and imagination and remembers instances of when we were in danger or had painful experiences, and so that it dwells upon those fear reactions. There's a very fine book by a scientist called Robert Sapolsky called "Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers," which I often quote. And he points out that a zebra on the plains in Africa, it needs to get, when a lion is nearby and it's in danger of being caught, then the zebra needs to get stressed. It needs fear, and it sees the lion and it smells the lion and it runs. But it only needs to be stressed for a couple of minutes, because either it'll get away or it won't. Either way, it needs that stress reaction. It needs to be fully afraid to protect itself. But seemingly zebras don't get ulcers because they can't remember having, or they don't worry about, well, I escaped from the lion yesterday, how will it be today? And then be fretting and worrying about what's going to happen while they're just starting their day if there's no lion in sight. Similarly, they don't imagine, well, what's it going to be like next week or next month? How am I going to deal with the lions then? And so we as humans get ulcers because we can take that fear reaction and we can spin it out over weeks and months and years. We can sustain that kind of stressing in an ongoing way, and so that we create fear as a neurotic problem because of the thinking mind taking hold of those useful fear reactions and turning it from being a protection into being a sort of neurotic problem. And so that in terms of this question, yeah, we do need fear. That's what helps us to not just wander out into the middle of the road when the cars are zooming by. It protects us, but so I would say that's wise fear is then being able to use that sense of caution when it's necessary, but also the wisdom comes in training the thinking mind to not follow it, to not be feeding on it, not to be dwelling on what happened yesterday or worrying about what happens next week, but rather to be cautious when it's appropriate to be cautious, and then to leave things alone when there is no danger. And so one of the huge issues, particularly in the Western world, but it's fairly universal around the planet, many societies, where there's particularly where there's a lot of leisure time, is that most of the suffering comes from the thinking mind. There might be a good food supply, there might be sort of a well-organized governments and such like, and a fairly, benevolent society, but because of all that leisure time, because of the capacity to think, then there's a huge amount of anxiety and depression and anxiety coming from this uncontrolled thinking, and the thinking mind making problems where there really isn't any kind of difficulty or danger. You got plenty of medicine, you got plenty of food, you got benign people around you. For the most part, there isn't anything that is immediately dangerous or threatening or difficult. I mean, I'm very conscious of the coronavirus factor as I'm saying this, but the majority of the time, the issues come from self-created dukkha, the mind taking hold of things and creating anxieties. And so that this is why meditation in particular is so helpful, because it is the very means whereby we can learn how to not believe our thoughts. We can train the mind to focus and to not get caught in these the strings of imagination in the past, from the past and the future, and rather to focus on the reality of the present and to be relating to each moment in a very fresh and alive way. And speaking of relating to the moment, I see Ajahn Chandasiri has just arrived from Scotland. So welcome, Ajahn. Good to see you. And I hope the journey was not too difficult for you. So this webcast will be going on for a little while longer, so we'll have time to catch up in due course. So I think that. So then the delusion of self, that is, to survive in this world without the delusion of self, I would say that it's not so much the self-view that is protecting us, but those instincts of caution and being attentive and that compassionate concern for our body and well-being of this life and other people's lives, and that there's no real need to be sustaining a self-view or to have a kind of a fixed ego structure, and that the more that we can see that the ego or self-view is like a convenient fiction that we use to talk, to refer to ourselves, to talk about other people, that's a far more helpful, skillful way of relating to that. If we need to be a person, we can be a person. If we don't need to be in that role of that particular personality, we can put it aside. And I feel that ability to put on roles and take them off is a very significant part of mental well-being, and that it's a habit of ours to always assume we've got to be the same person, or we've got to be one fixed, independent, individual reality all the time. That is one of these causes of a lot of anxiety and stress and difficulty. And so to be able to move more comfortably from one role to another. Sometimes it's appropriate to lead, sometimes it's appropriate to follow, sometimes it's appropriate to speak, sometimes it's appropriate to listen, so that and to be sometimes the one who's giving the instruction, sometimes the one who's learning, so that it's that quality of adaptability and not having to be the same person, or have a flexible sense of self, or say recognizing that those perceptions of self are rather like the clothes in your cupboard or in your drawers. If it's cold weather, you put on a jacket. If it's sunny weather, you get out the sun hat. What's the appropriate persona to put on for the day, and that those kinds of changes, or that adaptability, is very supportive of well-being. And so that yes, we can be a person, we can do the self thing, but as long as the mind recognizes this is just a performance, or it's just something that has a relative value. It's interesting that the word persona comes from the Latin meaning a mask. So right there in the English word is the clue that it's a mask. The person is a mask. It's also kind of interesting in the French language, personne means somebody and nobody. The same word has opposite meanings. It both means someone and no one. If there's any French people here? Is that correct, Venerable? Yeah. Okay, next one. Dear Ajahn, greetings from San Francisco, California. As you know, San Fran is a spiritual hub with all aspects of spiritual practices. As a new seeker on the Dhamma path, I'm overwhelmed by the choices of teachings from different traditions. My foundation is in Theravada Buddhism, but I'm also very interested in Sikh Kundalini Yoga. It is said that yoga is the airplane mode to reach self-realization. Not quite sure what the airplane mode means. Maybe that's sort of getting there quickly through the sky. In the meantime, shamanic tradition teaches that one can realize non-duality of universal consciousness through hallucinogenic journeys. What should I do, Ajahn? So I think be careful is my first thought. Staying on one path or try and combine different ones. I see many people here have the similar confusions. Thank you for your help. May you and Amaravati Sangha have a fruitful vasa. Well, very, very good question. Having lived been around the Bay Area for 15 or 20 years, I'm very familiar with that range, or some of the range of spiritual opportunities. The Bay Area Spiritual Directory, back in my day, it was about half an inch thick. It's probably it's probably an inch or two thick now. Well, it's probably they probably don't have a paper one anymore. But also going to shops like Open Secret, where they have every kind of spiritual tradition sort of laid out on the bookshelves, and all the different ritual objects from dozens of different spiritual traditions and practices, from singing bowls and shamanic wands and Buddha rupas and Ganesha and everybody. So it can be very confusing, and so for myself, I find I'm quite comfortable sort of being interested or finding out information about different traditions, but personally I'm very comfortable just living within the domain of Theravada Buddhism and being in the mode of a forest monk and having that as a clearly defining, say, format for spiritual practice. I feel that the principle of the Kalama Sutta is really helpful in this respect, and you might be familiar with that. This is where the Buddha was passing through a village called Kesaputta in northeast India, and the villagers there asked him about what kind of spiritual teaching should they follow and what should they trust. They said, you get many teachers and gurus and shamans coming through here. I think I quoted this sutta a week or two ago, so forgive me for repeating myself, but I will anyway. So they said we get all kinds of teachers and gurus and shamans and yogis coming through here, and they each have their own particular teaching and practices, and then most of them seem to say, I'm right and the other ones are wrong, this is the true way. So how do we know what to trust? How do we know what's valuable and what's real and what's going to really be of benefit? So in a unique teaching, a unique sort of approach, and probably unique amongst the world religions, the Buddha made the point of saying, don't believe a spiritual authority just because they are famous or they have a high reputation. Don't believe something just because everyone around you, all the people in the village believe it too, or don't believe it just because it's been told to you by your parents as being true, or that it's there in the Holy Scriptures. It says this is true and real, or if something is explained through inductive or deductive reasoning, that it makes logical sense, don't believe it either. And he goes through this whole list of 10 different criteria of ways that people tend to believe in things, and for each one of those he said, don't believe it just because of that. So he's somewhat unique in saying, don't believe me. Here he is being asked for his advice, and he's saying, don't believe me. But the principle he encourages the Kalamas, the people of the Kesaputta, he said, so when you hear a teaching, listen to it, see if it makes sense, apply it to the best of your ability, and then see what the results are. If you see that it leads to confusion, to conflict, to more suffering and difficulty, then leave it aside. If you see it leads to more peacefulness, to more harmony between yourself and others, if it leads to clarity rather than confusion, then be informed by that and take that and use that. So that he's encouraging them to use their own wisdom. And he's also, I feel, very beautifully and appropriately recognizing that they are the arbiters of truth themselves, rather than saying, I know the truth, I have the access to ultimate reality, and I'm going to tell you how it is. But rather, he saw that even if a spiritual authority is very reliable, we don't really learn in the same way that we do when we've discovered something for ourselves. Just like if we go back to our education in school or in college, university, it's usually the times when the teachers helped us to discover things for ourselves, rather than just gave us a list of things we had to remember. But when you had to figure it out for yourself, you had to make your own mistakes and learn your own lessons. That's when the understanding sank in a bit deeper, and we've got more of a real sense of how things operated, rather than just memorizing a list of principles that we're sort of taking on trust. So in terms of the kind of things that you're mentioning here, the Sikh Kundalini yoga and hallucinogenic journeys, particularly with the hallucinogens, I would tread extremely carefully. In particular, also look at the results of the people around you who are saying, this is great. And if you talk with them, you listen to them, and you look at the results of that, the behavior or that kind of practice from the outside, then be informed by that as well, because if you can see that someone's enthusiastic, but they're definitely not impressing you or inspiring you with the way they're behaving, or that they are a bit too glazed in the eye and a bit too excited, a bit too enthusiastic, and then be informed by that. Recognize, well, yeah, this person's certainly inspired and excited, but is it really grounded? Is there something reliable there? Let's think about that. Let's look at that carefully. And I left the Bay Area about 10 years ago now, almost exactly July of 2010. So I lived in that domain for quite a long time. From about 1990 was the first time I went to that area. So I was running into people who were doing all this, even highly reputed Vipassana teachers, Buddhist teachers, who were also doing the occasional hallucinogenic journey, or engaging in various different ancillary practices, and so that that's very much part of the Bay Area style. But I feel it's most important to trust your own wisdom, to see what brings benefit and clarity and what brings confusion, and not to be just sort of impressed or say dominated by what people around you say. That just because somebody's enthusiastic or they say, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, you can look them in the eye and say, just because I'm not interested doesn't mean to say I don't respect you or like you. I could love you and respect you and say, no thanks, I'm not interested in going down that track. And so that's a way of also having confidence in your own insight, confidence in your own perspective, and not being intimidated or just carried along by the influence of others. So that I feel that also it's up to individuals to make your own choices. Of people, I don't make people's decisions for them, but I would say that also the 5 precepts. There's a whole dialogue, and there was even a feature in one of the Buddhist magazines about whether taking hallucinogenics was technically against the 5 precepts. And so, to me, I was kind of surprised it was even a debate, because if my memory of taking hallucinogens is anything to go by, I would not want to be driving a car or performing brain surgery on anybody, or even giving a Dhamma talk in any of those kind of altered states. I said, yeah, but there was that pitcher, he was tripping on LSD and he pitched a no-hitter in a Major League Baseball game. You say, well, these stories exist, but for everyone on an LSD trip who pitched a no-hitter, there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of those who didn't. And so that, and I'm happily going on record as saying, personally, I consider taking hallucinogenics as a direct, say, breaking of the 5th precept If you were going for brain surgery, or you had an aortic aneurysm, like there's an aneurysm in your aorta, and the doctor says, well, I do best on mushrooms before I do surgery, so I just want to let you know I'm going to do a couple of these psilocybin mushrooms before I take up the knife. Is that all right? Would you go with that surgeon, or would you go with a different one? Just asking the question. And so that, so personally, I'm happy to go on record. I think my opinion and my understanding of the fifth precept is that that if you are taking these kind of psychoactive drugs, then that is clearly a breaking of the fifth precept. And the fifth precept is particularly significant because if the fifth precept is broached, then it tends to loosen or lower or fuzzy the relationship of the mind to the first four precepts, and so that it's particularly significant in many ways, and so that it has a bit of a unique position in the five precepts. But I would definitely say that using hallucinogens is a contravention is a transgression of the fifth precept. People are free to do whatever they want to do. People make their own choices. But I would say, in terms of choosing what you do and how you guide your practice, the five precepts is a really good, very reliable and supportive structure to use as a reference point. If you want to put that aside, that's your business. But I would say that having the five precepts as a basic structural form for considering what to choose and what to follow and how to try things out, then that's very, very beneficial. Okay, next one. Dear Ajahn Amaro, you've already answered multiple parenting questions during these Q&A sessions, but I have another one with a slightly different twist. Over the years, your advice has helped in many areas of my life, including parenting. I do my best to be a role model, follow the precepts, offer my children unconditional love and support, while also finding the appropriate times and places to offer them advice with loving kindness, based on facts, and with their best interests in mind. However, now my kids are teenagers who seem disengaged from the world and concerned primarily with the content on their electronic devices, like most teenagers. To paraphrase Khalil Gibran, I know that, quote, my children are not my children. Yes, I've quoted that myself a few times. But I feel a strong desire to help steer them towards more wholesome activities. Is this just another unhelpful desire? Should I smile and support them as they fill their days watching videos online? Or do you have any advice about motivating children? Oh, that's good questions. Well, the two kinds of desire, you have chanda, which is something which is directing the mind. It's a quality of directionality, that wishing or choosing. So it is desire, but chanda can be based on very wholesome qualities. Dhamma chanda, the desire for the Dhamma, or the kind of enthusiasm for truth. And so that kind of desire can be very wholesome. So I would say that your wish to help your children is very much a wholesome kind of chanda, an interest. Obviously, the difference between chanda and tanha, the craving, there can be a blurry line between those, or if there's any line at all, and it can slip into, I want my children to be fulfilling my wishes, or I want them to be a good representation of my values, and it can slide from like, you're telling yourself you want to help them, but actually it's more like, I want you to replicate me. I want to be able to tell people how proud I am of all your achievements. And so even though it might be labeled, I want the best for them, it kind of drifted into, it can be my aggrandizement program that's taken over. And so that there, a lot of mindfulness and wisdom and also honesty is helpful in the mix. Speaking about the children and their electronic devices, a year or so ago, there was a family came to visit And I was chatting with them, and this an American family, and Dad was telling me how that they had deliberately chosen a place to go for a family holiday where there was no cell phone reception. And his 11-year-old son was thinking of taking him to court for child abuse. I mean, kind of joking, not joking, as they were walking along. He's like, Dad, I think I'm going to get a lawyer, because I think this really does constitute child abuse. There's no cell reception. I mean, my friends. I mean, I can't post anything. I can't read anything from them. I mean, this is abuse. And so he said it was kind of banter, but kind of there was also kind of a sting in it as well. So I thought it was very well represented by the dad, I thought, and that's the kind of dynamic that a lot of families have nowadays. But again, I don't make decisions for people, but I feel that it's a very wholesome desire. That it's very important in terms of parenting. I'm not a biological parent, but I have a lot of monastic offspring. That you don't assume that what's valuable for you or important for you is what's valuable for the next generation. They might not be interested in what you're interested in. They might be interested in things that you don't see as having any value, or you've never even heard of. And it might be something that's really quite a great benefit. It really brings a lot of happiness for them and other people, and is really a good thing. But it's just not within your sphere of activity. Like when I announced to my parents from a page of an aerogram I sent from Thailand that I wanted to be a Buddhist monk, that was not in their range of possibilities for their only son. That this was not a career path they conceived as any kind of possibility, and it had no meaning or value, or didn't have any kind of thing to base it on. A Buddhist monk? What? Why? How? Where? Where's that come from? So, I was happy that my parents, they didn't understand or weren't very sympathetic, but they didn't stand in my way or make a big problem out of it. But they were certainly resistant. They were waiting for me to see, sense, and leave the robes up for about the first 15 years. So any of you who are waiting for your mum and dad to understand, it can be a long wait. But so I think it's important to respect your children's value system, that maybe some of the things that they're looking at in their electronic devices or the things that they're creating there might be something that's very useful. They might be connecting with their friends in very helpful ways. There might be something that is valuable that's coming out of that. And don't just presume, because your child is interested in something that has no meaning for you, that it is therefore meaningless. So I think that's to be respectful of each other as human beings, even if the other is really quite young. You're younger than a teenager. That I find a lot of respect for families who are, say, letting the younger ones be their own people, not sort of abandoning responsibility as a parent, but really respecting that how the child might have. Maybe both parents are scientists, but the child is really into religion and wants to have a shrine in the home and wants to learn how to chant and how to bow, and mum and dad are sort of like, really? Oh, okay, right. And they're happy to support that. Nothing that's come from either of them, but that's there in the child. And so being ready to let the child's own interest and enthusiasm take shape. So I feel that as again, quoting Khalil Gibran, your children are not your children, they are sons and daughters of life longing for itself. So to respect that individuality that the children have while you are there, being ready to be a good example, to be a helpful friend, and to be ready to guide, and to also help them to stop from injuring themselves and causing too much chaos with really foolish and destructive activities. But I said there's no formula for that. You can't. Again, the 5 precepts are really good. If you want your children not to be drinking or using drugs, it's really difficult to get the message across if you are, as a parent. So that's a very good way of helping them to follow your example. If you want them to not go drinking and partying, don't do that yourself. That can be a good example. In terms of trying to connect with them, if you emphasize how different that they are, or you just complain about them looking at luminous rectangles all day long, and that they're wasting their lives, it's not helpful just to complain, but I think the degree to which you can find things you can do together. Like, I thought it was a very skillful initiative for that family to take the kids to a place where they knew there was no cell phone reception. They thought, okay, let's try this and see what happens. So I think finding ways that you can spend time together, that both of you get a bit of what you like, that both the parents and the children have a part of what is comfortable and important to them, and that you're not sort of dragging them into their world or kind of complaining about their world and leaving them to it, but rather trying to creatively think about ways you can work together or engage in things that are partially pleasing to both of you, or that you can both get something that's really satisfying from, even if it's there's a part of it that you have to endure along the way. Like if parents taking the young children to Disneyland or something, that the mother or the father don't particularly enjoy it, but they go along with it because it means so much to the children. So that sense of finding creative ways to spend time together, and in that some kind of physical engagement, like climbing a mountain or going for hikes, or some way of getting the attention into the body and to be physically engaged can also be a very helpful part of that. Next one. Anapanasati Sutta. Dear Ajahn Amaro, thank you very much for still holding these inspiring and motivating Sunday sessions. I have a few questions regarding mindfulness of breathing. It seems to be very much at the heart of the Ajahn Chah tradition. When you look at the structure of the sutta, it's the Anapanasati Sutta, mindfulness of breathing, on from the part where the Buddha describes mindfulness of breathing, it looks like a gradual development of the training from, apprentice to master. Does the Buddha use the 4 foundations of mindfulness and later the 7 bojjhanga, 7 factors of enlightenment, as tools with which you can gauge the progress in your meditation and your practice? Both the sutta on the mindfulness of breathing, the Anapanasati Sutta, and the discourses on the foundations of mindfulness, they both have a lot of different dimensions. But in many of the Buddha's teachings, sometimes it's got a sequential element, like starts off with part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and so on, and it has a sequential quality. But often, along with the sequential quality, like the Eightfold Path, there's also a way that different parts support each other or inform each other along the way. So it's not strictly a sequence. It's not just A, then B, then C, then D. But it's rather talking about different dimensions of our being, so that the 4 foundations of mindfulness is not just, okay, you just do mindfulness of the body, and then once that's been utterly mastered, then you do mindfulness of feeling. Life doesn't work that way. You can't really only focus on rupa, on the body, on the kaya, and ignore feelings altogether, or ignore the mental world altogether. They overlap in our ordinary moment-by-moment experience. And so it's more like there are these different domains that operate, and we can choose to focus on a particular one, or we can see how they work together. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's like a measure of progress, but rather it's marking out the different domains from the course, like breathing as in a sort of biological function, the first aspect of mindfulness of breathing, the physical breathing in, breathing out. And then to the quality of sensation, and then the quality of mood that relates to it, and then the development of insight around that. And so it's like going from the most coarse or the most tangible to the most refined or intangible, but they're all part of the same mix, like the body and the mind work together all the time. They're a spectrum of experiences of. And you can't really completely divide one off from the other. They overlap. But you can choose to focus more on, okay, my body is sitting. That's a physical arrangement of this body. It's in a sitting posture at the moment. But I'm also, even as I'm saying that, I'm feeling the sensations of the body. And then there's the choice of the words that I'm using, there's a mental activity, and then if there's mindfulness and wisdom, there's a recognition that this is all just phenomena in a state of change, the different patterns of experience coming and going and changing. One of the say windows onto mindfulness of breathing that I would like to recommend is Larry Rosenberg's book Breath by Breath. I feel that it's a really good interpretation and walking you through the process of mindfulness of breathing, and he divides it up essentially into 4 sections: breathing with the body, breathing with feelings, breathing with the mind, and breathing with wisdom. And that really neatly sums up, I would say, that spectrum of qualities that you get there in the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutta. And those are different areas that you can focus on, but they all need each other. You can't, if you just focus on the wisdom aspect and ignore the physical aspect, then things are out of balance. If you just focus on the physical or the feelings and you ignore the rest, then things are out of balance. So that all the elements need each other, rather like a wheel. You know, the wheel needs all of the spokes for the wheel to stay integrated. So to continue the question, do you basically start just concentrating on the breath until you can do, quote unquote, that, and only then go on to the next aspect? So as I said, not exactly. Or can you train each aspect individually and then bring it all together in Anapanasati? Well, I would say, just as I was, that they inform each other all the time along the way. You can choose to focus on a particular aspect of it, like put the reflective part aside, okay, I'm just going to go to the sensation of the breath. I'm not going to think about the rest of the body. I'm just going to focus principally on that feeling of breathing in, breathing out, and consciously park the rest of the picture for this period of time. But you're also aware that you are parking, putting aside other aspects, and so that along the way you can use particular, say, attributes of the breath or a particular angle of approach, but I feel that the most important thing is that all the time that each of the different aspects are informing each other. Okay, and the last part was, because we train these aspects outside of formal meditation, don't we? Am I on the right track here, or am I getting completely lost in the brambles? May you all be safe and well with metta. So I would say not completely lost in the brambles, but if you can follow what I'm saying with that. And also I would highly recommend Larry Rosenberg's book that I haven't read a huge amount on Anapanasati, but I felt that was a really good, a simple, clear, and very reliable, very thorough description of mindfulness of breathing. So, hello Ajahn, can you please explain to me in simple terms what a jhana is? Well, one of the first thoughts that came to mind was that jhana is something to have an opinion about. That's a joke answer. So essentially, jhana means the quality of focusing the mind, or the mind, gathered around a single object, so that also the words samadhi or samatha, concentration, they also are more general terms relating to tranquility or concentrating the mind. But a jhana is where that quality of focus or tranquility has reached like a precise quality of being fixed on a single object. And so that it's probably the most accurate word in English to use is absorption. So the mind is absorbed into a particular object, and then that absorption it's based on skillful qualities. So that it's, you can be absorbed in an exciting football match, or you can be absorbed in an exciting rock concert, or you could be absorbed in going to the dentist and the pain of having your tooth drilled. Those are forms of concentration and absorption, but they're also tied up with fear and pain or excitement and such like. So jhana is where the absorption is based on, it's not based on fear or pain or excitement, or aversion, but rather it's based on wholesome qualities of peacefulness, is focused on a neutral or a wholesome object like the feeling of the breath, or the image of a Buddha, or a color, so that the object of that kind of tranquility meditation or absorption meditation is something that is either neutral or intrinsically wholesome, has wholesome or calming qualities to it. I don't know how simple it needs to be, but rather like entering a building, so absorption coming into the temple here, as we are, a number of us gathered here today. So entering, we use the words like entering or abiding in terms of referring to jhana, these states of concentration, so that there's often levels of approach to that state and then settling in it, and so that you have the words that refer to being in the region of jhana, so coming into the neighborhood of a concentration. So like you're getting close to the temple, you're in the region of that, the mind is getting settled down, you're kind of focusing on the breath, you're in the neighborhood of concentration, you're mostly focusing on the breath, the attention's a little distracted here and there, but you're in the neighborhood, so that's called neighborhood concentration, or drawing close. So it's like you're in the courtyard, you're getting close to the temple. Then there is the what they call access concentration. You're entering the lobby of the temple. You're kind of entering the building. The mind is focused on the breath. It's not really going anywhere. It's not fully settled. There's a bit of agitation in the system, I would say. And then when you enter the temple, the mind comes into the temple, and you get settled down. You're sitting on the chair or the cushion. It's like, okay, we've arrived. We're in the temple. So then that's called absorption concentration. So those words are used to describe that kind of arriving at that mental space and then settling down within it. Jhana is also, as I said, the kind of wisecrack that came to mind is that jhana is something to have an opinion about, because over the years, even since the Buddha's time, there were people who thought jhana is the most important thing. Concentrate. That's the thing that really has value. And then there are the insight people who say, no, jhana is just a waste of time. You get so absorbed, it's so blissful. You end up being attached to the happiness and delight of blissful mind states. You never develop any wisdom that way. So even in the Buddha's time, you had the jhana wallahs and the vipassana wallahs, there's one particular sutta where he describes when they're having a sangha gathering, and monks are asking the Buddha, how should we organize the accommodations? He said, well, put the jhana team in one area, and then put the insight team in another area, put the Vinaya experts over here, and the ones who just like to hang out and chat with each other and cause a lot of confusion, put them all over there with each other. So that things haven't really changed a lot in 2,500 years in terms of Sangha life. That we each have our own different characters and focuses, and so that not to make things more confusing, but sometimes people attach to the idea of jhana, concentration, and say this is really important, and I'm telling you that this is right, and the other points of view are really wrong. And they come up with good explanations, and other people say, no, jhana's a waste of time, you don't need to do all of that, just insight. That's vipassana, that's what really matters. And so Luang Por Chah would often emphasize that these are both aspects of the mind, and that taking sides with one particular group or one particular idea and complaining or criticizing another, so this is called foolishness. And so it's far more important to apply these practices and teachings to really bring about well-being within oneself. He also used a very helpful analogy. He said, concentration without insight, if you have a lot of concentration, like the mind is really good at jhana, but there's not much development of wisdom or insight. It's like a candle. A candle's got a lot of potential, but if you're in the dark and you've got a candle but you don't have a match, it's still pretty dark. There's potential, but you still can't see. So vipassana without concentration If you have insight but no concentration, then it's like having a match. You can strike it and you can see in the dark, but not for very long because you haven't got much fuel. And so you can see for a bit, but the match burns out very quickly. But if you have the two together, you have a match and a candle, you light the candle with the match, and then you can see in the dark for a long time. So I feel that's a very helpful way, not just of relating to jhana and the sort of bright and blissful qualities that come from that sort of absorption into a wholesome object, but also the skillful way of understanding the relationship between insight and concentration, jhana and insight. Dear Ajahn Amaro, could you talk about the topic of giving feedback to people and how to be skillful in it? Thank you. It's a good question. This gets frequently asked about very frequently crucial issue. Well, giving feedback to people, I'll say the first thing is, how good are you at receiving feedback? Because it's not just a matter of you giving it to other people, but if you're resistant to receiving it yourself, or you don't want to hear things that people say, or to tell you things that you're uncomfortable with, then the very basis on which you would like to give feedback to somebody else is going to be a bit dodgy. So that I think it's helpful to look within your own heart, say, okay, how open am I to receiving feedback from others? Okay, right. So then think about giving feedback to other people. So there's a helpful list of criteria that one is encouraged to use in terms of giving feedback. Firstly, is to, I would say, do you want them to change just so that you will feel more comfortable? Or do you want them to change for their benefit? If you follow what I mean. So I'm not sure who asked the question, but so if I want you to be different just so that I will be happier, I don't really care about you. I just want you to stop doing what you're doing because it's annoying me. Then I'm not really connected with you at all. I'm not caring about you. And so that if I want you to change, I want to give you feedback so that your behavior won't annoy me, then that's not going to be very beneficial. It's really helpful before even thinking about giving feedback to get to a place where I feel I should say something because this person's really hurting themselves. They're really hurting themselves, they're hurting the people around them, and I don't think that she or he is realizing what they're doing. And so it will be useful for somebody to make some input. I guess it might as well be me as be anybody. And so that, I found that that's not really, that one isn't really in the scriptures in those words, but I found that a really helpful principle, because if I'm coming from, I want you to be different so that I'll be happy, and you're just this sort of annoying thing in my field of experience, then it just creates more division and more alienation and more dukkha, really. If there's a genuine sense of empathy, compassion, like, I care about you, you keep sticking your hand in the meat grinder and causing yourself misery, maybe I can help you to stop doing that because you're causing yourself so much pain and difficulty, then okay, I should find a time to speak up. But so I found for myself that's a useful principle. So in terms of the more classical advice, firstly, to examine your intention and to see that you're free of aversion and negativity. You're not coming from a place of hatred or self-righteousness, but you're coming from a heart of loving kindness. So there's a metta cittena with a heart of loving kindness. There's which is a simpler way of what I was just describing in a bit more detail. So that's the first one. Secondly, you should ask permission to bring up the subject, saying, would it be okay to have a conversation sometime? There's something I'd like to talk with you about. And oftentimes, especially living in the Sangha, people know, what is it? What's the problem? There's a kind of way that you phrase it, even though you didn't mention anything, they know, he's got some gripe. What is it? You can feel yourself tensing up immediately. They're not just talking about where they can get a new towel from or something. But so you ask permission to bring a subject up. If the person says no, then okay, leave it. Yeah, it's if they are resistant, then at that time, then it's appropriate to leave it. Maybe come back to it later. So then the next one is to speak according to the facts. So what you know to be true, or what you have experienced, rather than just on hearsay, rather than I heard that you did this, or somebody told me that you had said that. That you are making sure to say exactly that. I heard it said that you did this, and so that was upsetting, and I need to know whether that really happened that way or not. If you say to them, you did this, or you said that, and you weren't there, you didn't hear it yourself, that's called acting on hearsay. And so that the encouragement is to speak according to the facts of what you've seen for yourself or heard for yourself, or to say that this is the story I was told, and so I want to find out what the actuality, or what your side of the picture is. So sticking to the facts. Also choosing an appropriate time and a place to speak, so that if someone does say, okay, I'll have a conversation with you, you don't do it in the middle of the common room, or a place where someone's just going to kind of walk through and make a cup of tea, or start talking 10 minutes before you're both supposed to go to the Pūjā. But rather you choose a time that's you've got plenty of opportunity to speak freely in a place where other people aren't going to wander in, so that it's not sort of going to be inconvenient or challenging or intimidating, so that you're thoughtful about where you're having the conversation and the environment of the conversation. And then the final one of these 5 conditions is you should be free of the same fault yourself. And so oftentimes people say, can we negotiate number 5, please? So if you want to criticize somebody for getting angry and being opinionated, say, do I have to let go of all my opinions before I bring that up with so-and-so? Do I have to be completely free of anger before I bring up my issues with their angry behavior? And so seriously, I have had people say, can we negotiate that? That was in California, but it was, I think it's fair enough. And so that you, to the degree that it's possible to be free of the same issue, the same condition, but also in raising a subject, you can say, I realize I'm not completely free of this myself, but I feel I need to talk with you about this because it's something that's been upsetting or difficult to deal with, and so you can acknowledge your own, the work that you need to do, your own shortcomings, and so that's a way of working with that 5th condition. But in principle, that's good to be recognizing your own faults and not just criticizing other people's. So that's some issues about giving feedback, and so I hope that helps things along. And then the last one, dear Ajahn Amaro, regarding various desires that we have, it seems that the more you give, the more it wants. And it seems to work the same way for different kinds of desire. For food, for love, for security, for respect. Is it the case for all of these desires that the best way of reducing them is not to scratch the itch? ? And to just observe them, reminding yourself that it's impossible to satisfy them. Thank you for your teachings. Very good question. Kind of goes back to the 4 Noble Truths. I think, first of all, recognizing the source of the itch, and to be able to name that a desire is a desire. That's, in a way, part of the process. And the most important part is to see this is the mind in a desire state. There's this feeling of wanting. When it's absorbed, and there is that the kind of unskillful absorption into a desire object, then the mind isn't even seeing it as desire. It's just want, good, get, and it's locked onto the object. So even the degree of objectivity that recognizes, oh, here is the mind getting caught into that desire pattern again. It was food, now it's sleep. It was affection, and now it's vengeance. Whatever it might be, that just that degree of objectivity is extraordinarily helpful. So, it's that tune again. It's that same flavor. That there it is again. So that recognizing the chemistry of this is tanha doing its thing. So that even to that degree, at that moment, the attention has withdrawn, has disconnected, has disentangled itself from the object, and it's it was food. Now it's love. Now it's respect, or now it's security. Here comes another one. And another one. and another one. Look. And the degree to which the mind can recognize, it's kind of shameless. It's just fire looking for fuel. It's sort of a mindless search. The fire doesn't have consciousness. It just burns anything that's burnable. And so desire is kind of the same way. Anything will do. And just being able to disconnect to that degree is helpful. The more that the mind can see that, and then see the lack of value inherent in the desire object, whether it's food or sex or power or security or love or approval or whatever it might be, revenge, or annihilation, just to switch off, to not feel that the degree to which you can see that object doesn't have any intrinsic value, that it's not intrinsically attractive, it's not intrinsically good, doesn't intrinsically have meaning, that, so in a way, de-glamorizing it, sort of saying that the mind is giving that thing value. It's like an example I often give is, if you're hungry, food is really interesting. If you're full, or if you're after you've got a full stomach after the mealtime is over, generally food is uninteresting. The very same food that's in your bowl, that when you're sitting down there hungry, going, interesting. After your stomach is full, the last bit of food in your bowl is like, doesn't look very interesting at all. If that was the only food you were going to have that day, it would be, look, I got something. And so that genuine seeing of the desirability is in the mind. It's not in the object. It's not in the food. It's not in the person. It's not in the sound. It's not in the feeling. The attractiveness is in the beholder. It's here. It's not there. To really see that and know that helps to break the spell and the glamour that things have. Sometimes one of the methods that Ajahn Chah would use would be, because he was very strict, very rigorous, but he also saw that sometimes by saying no all the time, you gave things more power. So if he decided to give up certain kinds of food, or he was sort of creating some kind of discipline, and he kept saying no, and that the mind was get really obsessed through that saying no, it amplified the value and the intensity. I got it, it's really good. You said no to mangoes this week, just one. And then the whole universe shrinks to the size of a mango. But it's like, it's going to be the whole thing. And this is how the mind works. It can be really crazy. And so once in a while, when Ajahn Chah was a young monk and very much in his sort of training mode, he would occasionally, it was close, occasionally sort of give the mind what it wanted. Say, okay, mangoes, you want mangoes? Okay, today we'll have as many mangoes as you can get in your bowl. So apparently on one day he ate 37 mangoes on that principle, which is a lot, and they're quite acidic too. So he said, mangoes, you want mangoes are going to make you happy, are they? Okay. So he filled his whole bowl, and his whole lid was piled up with all the mangoes he could get his hands on, and ate his way through the whole lot. So even when he was feeling like, okay, that's enough, keep going, you wanted mangoes are going to make you happy, keep going. And there's a particular kind of sweet that they make for a certain festival in the northeast of Thailand, that is sort of wrapped in banana, a kind of a sticky rice sweet that they make. And he was focusing on, this festival's coming up, there's going to be a lot of those sweets. And moving into that kind of a craving mode. And he said, okay, you want those sweets? Okay. And he did the same thing. I think he had about 84 of them, which is, I don't know what shape his guts were in at the end of all of that. But so that, it's rather like, if any of you are familiar with the Shakespeare play Twelfth Night, it begins with Duke Orsino saying, if music be the food of love, play on, so that surfeiting the appetite may sicken and so die. So if music be the food of love, play on. So that he was in love with somebody and was tired of being in love. And he said, if music be the food of love, play on, so that surfeiting, so by having too much, the appetite will sicken and so die. So by having too much of the thing that you want, then by overdoing it, then you can lose the appetite for that. So I think Shakespeare had a bit of insight into the same process. But if those of you, the desire minds of those of you who think, oh, this is license. Okay, Ajahn Amaro said, just give the desire everything that it wants. So don't quote me, or tread very carefully by following that through. This was Ajahn Chah doing this, so he did end up as an arahant, so please tread carefully when giving desire all that it wants, because it can lead to years of miserable vipaka, having followed the particular desires to their limit. So tread very carefully on that. But so sometimes by saying no to something, you do empower it. You make it, you make it stronger. You make it more fascinating by saying no, 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 no. And so that then that occasionally saying, okay, come on, let's. You keep saying no to this. Have the thing that you want, and then pay attention to it. And so that then even when a desire is followed. If there is a degree of mindfulness, even as you're gratifying a desire, to then, in a way, to sort of spoil the magic by saying, okay, so here you are, you're having what you want. Now, is this making you totally happy? Is this really bringing complete satisfaction? And then if you notice that little voice in the heart that says, oh, shut up, you're ruining the whole thing, then you know it's working, because that's the voice of Mara being forced to speak. That's the the mind that wants to be absorbed and fascinated by sense objects. That as the Buddha said, there are visible forms cognizable by the eye that are delightful, pleasing, endearing. Yeah, one who attaches to those, absorbs into those, and is infatuated by those, they have gone over to Mara's side, and the evil one can do with them as he likes. It's a pretty intimidating comment, but it's like that. It's a sort of mythological way of speaking, but it's like if you have shut out that voice of wisdom that doesn't want to reflect, and it says, yes, this is good and I'm going to get it, this is mine, then that is literally going over to Mara's side. You're absorbing the mind into the values of the sense sphere and deliberately shutting out the voice of wisdom. You're shutting out the perspective of Dhamma. You're closing the Dhamma eye. You can't really close it forever, but at that moment, that's what is being done. The Dhamma eye is being shut down, and that's also by drugs and alcohol, and particularly alcohol, that is a way of shutting the Dhamma eye. You're literally shutting down your inhibitions. You're shutting down that voice that says, "Is this really making you happy?" Or, "Why do you keep doing this?" Or, "You want another one?" And it's. The practice of Dhamma is really opening that eye, of bringing that perspective in that does kind of spoil the chemistry, and says, yeah, well, this is delicious, but it can't be an end in itself. Or yeah, this is pleasant, but it's very dependent. Or yes, getting away from that painful issue it's comfortable for this moment, but doesn't mean that you'll never experience pain ever again. So that it's that kind of Dhamma perspective is extraordinarily valuable. As a loss, as a grief, where it's like coming out of a dream, or the illusions of childhood having to be left behind. There's a loss, there's a sadness. So like, I was enjoying that, or like, don't ruin it. I was enjoying that. And yet that out of that loss, there's also a growing, there's a development, a waking up that we experience. Even as there that sort of shedding of an illusion, we're waking up into the reality of the way things are. And that and there's a much greater freedom, and also the foundation of reality itself is there when those pleasant or cherished illusions are left behind. So I'll leave it there for this week. Thank you for these good questions, and next week we'll have a different format.